Dear friends, welcome to this very first episode of UFO Encounters in Italy. My name is Matt. I will be your host through this series, and I'm glad that you are here with me. I decided to create this series after the success of a similar show I held on my Instagram channel called Mysteries from Matt. I decided to go a bit further, a bit deeper into UFO encounters in Italy through this new show. And I'm happy to have you here with me. Let's start with the very first case, the case of Rosa. Rosa was a 40-year-old farmer. She lived in a countryside not far from Florence in Tuscany region. She lived in an area of woods and hills. And that morning, it was the 1st of November 1954, she was going to the church to attend the Mass on the day of All Saints. She carried in her hands the stockings and a bunch of flowers. She was right in the middle of the wood, walking quietly, when just arrived into a glade in a clearing. She saw a very strange craft. It was a sort of diamond-shaped object, bronze in color, consisted of two semicones, and Rosa really didn't know what the hell was that device. I will get some iconographic help from the wonderful books by my friend Mr. Moreno Tambellini. And in this book, UFO and Aliens in Italy, you find a drawing of that strange object. And this is it. Can you see that? This is a sort of diamond with a hatch. It was open, that hatch. And two little seats inside the craft. Well, Rosa was still wondering what the hell was that strange device when just behind some tree, some bush, she saw two little creatures emerge. They were just 1 meter tall, looking like kids in appearance, but not on their faces, because they looked like adult people. This, thanks to another brilliant book by Mr. Moreno, Aliens in Italy, this is the appearance of those little strange beings, you know? Sort of pilots wearing a curious, dress over uniform or something like that. A sort of helmet or semi-helmet maybe. And the curious thing was that both these creatures kept smiling to her. And they even tried to talk to her using a strange, unusual language, which sounded a bit like liu lai loi lia lai. It was a very melodic sounding. It was, Rosa thought that it could be somehow similar to Far East languages such as Chinese, but of course it was something that she never heard before in her whole life. Rosa was half amazed and half terrified, and she began being very scared when one of the two creatures, still smiling, picked the flowers and the stockings from her hands and simply threw them into the hatch, into their strange device. Same time, the little creature picked from the device a sort of brown box or something like that, and looking at the box and looking at Rosa alternatively, he really gave the impression to her that he was going to take a picture of her. Well, that was definitely too much for Rosa. She thought that maybe they could do some harm to her, so she decided to run away from that spooky place. She left the glade and followed the path to the church, but she was very careful and looked behind her shoulders to see if maybe the two little creatures were going to follow her. But the last glimpse of them she had, it was both of them close to their diamond-shaped craft, looking at each other and looking at her, and simply smiling and probably talking with a strange language. Liulai loi lialai. And that was it. About 10 minutes later, Rosa reached the church and told the story everybody. And since she was a well-respected person in that community, all of the people ran to the wood. They didn't find the creatures. They didn't find the diamond-shaped craft. They found a sort of marking in the ground where probably that unusual craft was landed. But in the following days, several witnesses that didn't know each other came out after an investigation carried on by the Italian police, Carabinieri. Several different witnesses either saw the craft landing or taking off from the wood. So it's really difficult to say that there was a kind of hoax, as somebody suggested. And since we have separate witnesses, it's also difficult to think that it was a hallucination, because somebody told that the previous night, the night before the encounter, at dinner, somebody in her family was talking about flying saucers. So that could lead us to think that maybe Rosa was somehow influenced by that, and maybe she simply had an hallucination. But what was that marking in the ground, and why so many different witnesses reporting that? There was also a priest, so quite credible people, you know. Well, Rosa died many years later. She was more than 90, and she never denied the truth of her story. So it's really difficult to say what really happened, and it's really difficult to find some alternative explanation. So a big question mark remains. Once again, thank you for being here with me. If you want to go further into the case, feel free to leave me your comments here below with critics, suggestions, and any other story of or comment you might have desired to leave. No problem at all. I will be only glad to read your comments. Stay with me, subscribe to the channel if you want, and click the ring bell. And let's go together into the deep and fascinating trip into the UFO encounters in Italy. See you next time. Ciao!